I'm a translator at a conference center in Brussels. And last month, I watched an American consultant walk into his first European strategy meeting carrying what he called his Efficiency Toolkit. The toolkit turned out to be a laminated agenda that allocated exactly 7 minutes per topic. He announced this to the room of Belgian, Dutch, and German executives like he was unveiling a revolutionary invention. Back home, we respect everyone's time by keeping meetings tight, he explained, tapping his watch. In America, we've perfected the art of the productive meeting. One of the Belgian directors glanced at the 17-page analysis his team had prepared for this 2-hour discussion and quietly closed the folder. Within minutes, the American asked why we hadn't started yet, since it was already 9:02. The German attendees, who'd arrived at 8:50 and were still reviewing materials, looked confused. The meeting starts at 9, he pressed. That means we should be discussing agenda item 1 right now. Not shuffling papers, pulled out his phone to demonstrate his point, showing everyone his calendar app, where the meeting was highlighted in red with "Start promptly" written in the notes section. The Dutch CFO responded that in their culture, starting at 9 means beginning the discussion at 9, not walking through the door at 9. The American shook his head knowingly. See, that's the problem with global business. Everyone interprets 9 o'clock differently. In the States, we solved this decades ago with something called punctuality. He then suggested we adopt American Standard Time for all future meetings, which he claimed was recognized by the International Business Council as the most efficient temporal framework. There is no such council. The rest of the meeting, he interrupted every detailed explanation with, "Can we get the Cliff's Notes version? Or what's the bottom line here? I work reception at a law firm in Munich, and 3 months ago an American attorney showed up 14 minutes late to meet our senior partners. When I politely mentioned he'd missed the start time, he laughed and said, 14 minutes? That's not late. That's fashionably on time." He explained that in American business culture. Arriving within 15 minutes of the scheduled time is considered punctual because it shows you're busy and in demand. He even had a term for it, power lateness, according to him. Only junior employees arrive early because they have nothing better to do. The partners, who'd been sitting in the conference room since 9:55 for the 10 o'clock meeting, were not impressed. My cousin manages a design studio in Copenhagen, and last year, an American creative director joined for a project kickoff. During introductions, she immediately told everyone to call her by her first name, then started calling our 62-year-old founder Buddy in Chief. When someone gently suggested using his title, she waved it off. "We don't do that hierarchical stuff in America. It's actually proven to reduce productivity by 40%, she announced with complete confidence. She claimed American business schools eliminated formal titles in the 1980s after a Harvard study showed they stifle innovation. When our founder continued to be addressed as Herr Hansen by everyone else, she pulled him aside after the meeting to warn him that his insistence on titles was giving the company outdated vibes. Offered to send him some articles about modern leadership, a paralegal at a firm in Amsterdam. And 6 months ago, an American consultant was invited to present to our board. He opened with a joke about marijuana laws, which got zero reaction. Undeterred, he launched into what he called his icebreaker, asking everyone to share a fun fact about themselves. Our directors, who'd prepared a detailed agenda for this 30-minute meeting, sat in uncomfortable silence. "Come on, don't be shy," he encouraged. "In America, we know that teams bond through personal connection. I'll start. I once ate 17 hot dogs at a company picnic." He waited for others to share. When no one did, he confidently diagnosed the problem. "I get it. European professionals haven't been trained in modern team-building techniques." He then spent 8 minutes explaining how American corporations had cracked the code on workplace culture through mandatory fun. The board members exchanged glances as their meeting time evaporated. "I work at a tech incubator in Stockholm. And last spring, an American startup founder attended our funding review meeting. She started her presentation by saying she'd keep it brief. then spoke for 45 minutes straight, without pausing. Every time someone tried to ask a question, she'd say, "Great question, I'll get to that," and continue talking. After the meeting ran 30 minutes over, she complained that European investors don't respect the pitch process. She told me that in Silicon Valley, interrupting a founder's pitch is considered disrespectful because the American entrepreneurial model relies on letting visionaries complete their vision. Statement unimpeded. She claimed this was based on research from Stanford that proved interruptions reduced funding success by 60%. The research doesn't exist. She followed up with a 20-page email explaining how our meeting format was fundamentally broken. I'm a server at a restaurant in Lyon, and 2 months ago, an American business delegation came in for lunch. One of them immediately asked if we could speed things up because they had a 2 o'clock meeting. When I explained that lunch service typically runs 2 hours, he looked panicked. 2 hours. For lunch? That's half a workday. He asked if we could bring everything at once so they could eat faster. I explained this wasn't how French dining works, and he responded, "Well, in America, we've optimized the dining experience for maximum efficiency." He claimed that American restaurants had solved the meal pacing problem in the U.S. 1990s by introducing something called power dining, where busy executives get their entire meal in 30 minutes. He suggested we adopt the model, insisting it would revolutionize European business culture. They left after 90 minutes. Visibly frustrated, having barely finished their main course, my brother-in-law manages a cafe in Vienna. And last fall, an American consultant tried to order coffee to go during a business breakfast meeting he'd scheduled there. When my brother-in-law mentioned this wasn't a takeaway cafe, the American seemed baffled. "But I'm busy. I need to multitask." He explained that in American business culture, walking meetings are scientifically proven to boost creativity by 35%. Cited a study he claimed was published in the Journal of Executive Productivity showing that sitting during meetings reduces cognitive performance. The journal doesn't exist. He then suggested that cafe was losing money by not offering paper cups, stating that American cafes make an additional $50,000 annually by enabling mobile professionals. He said this with such certainty that a tourist at the next table started Googling whether it was true. I work at a hotel in Barcelona, and 6 months ago, an American executive complained that our restaurant didn't open until 8:30 p.m. How is anyone supposed to get dinner and prep for tomorrow's meetings? He demanded. When I explained that Spaniards eat dinner late, he shook his head sympathetically. That's a productivity killer. Americans solve this issue by standardizing dinner at 6 p.m. across all business districts. He claimed there was something called the North American meal timing protocol that synchronized dinner hours to maximize evening work time. He showed me his phone calendar, which had dinner 6 o'clock to 6:30 p.m. blocked out. It's proof that this was the professional standard. He spent 20 minutes trying to convince me that European businesses were leaving money on the table by not adopting earlier meal times. Citing statistics he'd apparently invented on the spot, I'm a restaurant manager in Brussels. And last month, an American businesswoman tried to end her lunch after 45 minutes by asking for the check multiple times. When our server didn't immediately bring it, she grew increasingly agitated. She finally stood up and walked to the kitchen to complain. "In America, we don't hold customers hostage," she informed me. The American Restaurant Association requires servers to present the bill within 3 minutes of the entree being finished. She claimed this was a federal regulation, passed in 2015 to protect consumers from meal detention. When I gently explained that in Belgian culture, presenting the bill too quickly is considered rude, she looked at me like I described an ancient ritual. "That's so inefficient. How do you get through your day?" She left a lengthy online review warning Americans about our refusal to respect customer time management needs. I'm a corporate driver in Geneva, and last winter, I picked up an American executive from the airport. She asked how long the drive to her hotel would take, and when I said 30 minutes, she replied, "Oh, so basically nothing. In the States, we consider anything under an hour a quick trip. She then spent the entire drive explaining how Americans had mastered long-distance efficiency through something she called interstate consciousness, according to her. The average American commutes 2 hours daily without complaint because we understand that distance builds character. When I mentioned that Europeans generally prefer shorter commutes for work-life balance, she looked concerned. That explains the productivity gap. In America, we've proven that longer commutes increase mental resilience by 45%. She offered to send our company information about implementing American-style geographic thinking in Switzerland. My sister works at a train station in Rotterdam. Last summer, an American tourist loudly complained when his train left exactly at the departure time. "I was only 2 minutes late," he protested. In America, trains wait for passengers because customer service matters. He insisted that American railways had solved this problem through something called flexible departure protocols, where trains wait up to 5 minutes for late arrivals. When my sister explained that Dutch trains run on precise schedules, he seemed shocked. That's so rigid. What if someone's running from another platform? He claimed the American Department of Transportation had conducted studies proving that flexible timing reduced passenger stress by 70%. The studies don't exist. He filed a complaint stating that European transit systems needed to adopt American standards of passenger-first scheduling. I work at a language school in Prague, and 6 months ago, an American manager enrolled for business check lessons. After one session, he asked why we didn't just teach everyone English instead. "It's the universal language of business," he stated. In American corporations, we solved the language barrier problem by making English mandatory in all international dealings, claimed there was an international treaty signed in 2010 establishing English as the official language of global commerce, ratified by over 100 countries. The treaty doesn't exist. He suggested our school was wasting people's time teaching local languages when the American linguistic model has already standardized business communication worldwide. He dropped out after 2 lessons, saying he'd given Czech a fair shot. I'm a taxi driver in Lisbon, and last year, I drove an American consultant to 3 meetings across the city. After the 3rd trip, he commented that European cities were unnecessarily complicated compared to American ones. In the States, we built our cities on a grid system so people don't waste time with winding streets, he explained. He claimed that American urban planners had calculated that grid systems reduce travel time by 40% compared to European-style maze cities, suggested that Lisbon could save millions annually by restructuring like Manhattan. When I pointed out that Lisbon was built centuries before Manhattan existed, he nodded sympathetically. Exactly, that's why it's outdated. American cities learn from Europe's mistakes and fix the design flaws. He tipped well, but left me a business card for urban efficiency consulting. I'm a conference coordinator in Milan. And last week, an American speaker finished his presentation 15 minutes early and seemed proud of it. See? Efficiency, he announced to the room of Italian executives who'd blocked out 2 hours for detailed discussion. When they tried to engage with his points, he kept checking his watch and saying he had optimized the timeline by cutting out the unnecessary parts. He genuinely believed he'd done everyone a favor. Before leaving, he handed out copies of what he called the American Meeting Manifesto, explaining how U.S. business practices should be adopted globally for maximum productivity. One of the executives thanked him politely, then dropped it in the recycling bin on his way out. The American noticed and called after him, asking if he'd read it yet. "It's transformative material," he insisted. The executive smiled and said he'd definitely take a look. As the American packed up his efficiency toolkit and 7-minute agenda templates, I overheard him tell someone that Europeans were so close to figuring out modern business and just needed a little American guidance. He flew home that afternoon, confident he'd planted the seeds of change. Meanwhile, the Italian team went to lunch for 3 hours and closed a deal worth €8 million.